Mike Tomkiewicz, you can see him on the screen, frequently joins us, attorney, shareholder, Gray Robinson, and a snappy dresser, if I do say so myself. By the way, on the website, you with that what would be called a headshot, but it's actually your whole torso. Sharp, good sir. That's a good-looking suit you got there.
Thanks. Appreciate it. A lot of running, a lot of playing golf, just healthy living, Jeff.
Okay, so let's get caught up because I think some in my audience, and that would include myself, a little confused by what I was seeing yesterday as if something was new, but I don't think it was new, right? What I read yesterday was that there was a formal ruling from the first hearing for which Judge Cooper dismissed their stay. And basically, you can tell me the legal version of this. It read to me like, when you read it, it's kind of like he was tired of the BS they were pulling, like no way they were going to dismiss the case.
Yeah, what you're seeing in this order from Judge Cooper is what we knew to be the case prior to yesterday, is that this case is going to be moving forward in Leon County. Judge Cooper is throwing it out there. He's got it in writing. We're denying the stay. There's no way we're staying it. All of the arguments by the ACC about why this should be stayed and it should proceed in North Carolina instead are wrong. And I mean, I don't know if you want me to go through the ticky-tackiness of the legal doctrines, but basically, you read this order from Cooper and you have a lot of confidence in the ruling. Sometimes when you get the ruling, you look at it and you say, oh, this could be susceptible to some kind of appeal. Certainly in Florida, subject matter jurisdiction is an immediately appealable issue. So it may be that after we get through the motion to dismiss, and it looks like Cooper will deny it ultimately, then they could appeal that ruling and say that there is no subject matter jurisdiction. But I think with this order from Judge Cooper, which is extremely well reasoned, it's clear that he is not letting this go. It will proceed here in Leon County.
Yeah, so the takeaway from the vantage point of a Florida State supporter, fan, alumni, booster, whatever it might be, is that, hey, look, there's no way that this is going to get dismissed. So we cleared that hurdle. That's a good thing, right? I mean, they're all good to go. That's basically what you're telling me.
Yep, he's basically agreeing. From the outset, we were saying that it was an anticipatory filing by the ACC, and he agrees with that. He says that forum shopping is not allowed, and we're not going to allow that here.
The last time you and I talked, and I thought this was interesting, and I still continue to think it's interesting because you warned everybody, maybe the initial time we talked, that, look, man, the wheels of justice move slow, and this is going to get bogged down, and you kind of feel like you're wading through the molasses, and most people just want, A, they would love for it to be resolved sooner rather than later, but B, they want clarification on big picture issues. And so I remember we were talking, and you helped define breach of contract issues. And if you breach, the penalty shouldn't be punitive. It's that you have to make the other side whole. Do I understand that? And there's a reason that I'm kind of bringing this up. I'll tell you in a moment. But that's right.
Yeah, that's the concept behind contract law, is that you're trying to make the party whole for the breach that's occurred.
Okay, so the more I looked into that, the more I thought, okay, well, then it's also interesting that you pointed out he was going to push towards mediation, right?
Yep, and Judge Cooper likes parties to mediate, just like any good judge does, because if the parties settle, then there's no legal rulings that can be appealed and keep going. So,
all right, so I'm going to continue to piece this together. They wanted to go to he wants to go to mediation. Certainly the punishment right now, one would think, looking at the monetary $500 plus, $600 plus million when they put it all together for FSU if they left the ACC, would seem punitive. So, and unreasonable, especially because, Mike, it's not that expensive for anybody to leave the SEC or the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. So there's no way the value of that contract is more than the SEC or the Big Ten. So,
yeah. Well, if I could just jump in there real quick.
Yeah.
The concept in law that we're talking about here is this idea of liquidated damages. So what that provision is, where they say that it's worth X millions of dollars, is they're saying we don't have to really prove our damages. There's a penalty that you have to pay if you try to get out of this agreement with the conference. And so I think that what you're going to see through this litigation is they'll start attacking that number and saying that you've included a liquidated damages provision, but it's not a reasonable calculation of the actual damages that you would face if we left. And so that's I think what you're kind of alluding to when you're talking there.
Yeah, I'm stumbling through it. That's why you're here. But you're right. But you're absolutely, yes, that's what I wanted to know, because it seems to me that if we get to that place where it's in mediation, we're just talking about a number. We're just trying to get to an effing number that's reasonable. Florida State, for example, Mike, feel free to just talk however you'd like about this. Florida State knows they're going to have to pay a sum. They've always known that, right?
I think that you saw that somebody did some digging on the financial requests that the board set aside earlier in the year, and there was a large amount of money that's still unaccounted for, that's not directed to stadium improvements and facility improvements, stuff like that. So I'm pretty confident that FSU is willing to stroke a pretty big check right away. The problem is we don't think it should be $500 million.
And there's some, again, I'm asking you, I guess, to give an opinion, and I'm just really trying to have the conversation to create the larger picture for everybody listening out there. It seems to me, right, it's unreasonable and punitive to have to strike a check for $500+ million to leave the ACC. That we don't suspect, by the way, so let me go circle back. When I asked you this last time, I think you said it was good. Do you agree that it was good that Clemson filed as well, right?
Yeah, my strategy, if I were the lawyer handling this, I'd want everybody in there making a bunch of noise, drawing their attention, coming up with their own angles. I think that the Clemson lawsuit in particular is really well done. And my hat's off to the lawyers that are handling that. It looks like Nelson Mullins is spearheading that, but they've now asserted punitive damages. I just read through that count today, and they're basically saying that there's a slander of title with respect to their media rights, that the ACC is out there saying that they can't leave until 2036 and that all their media rights belong to the ACC until 2036. And that's a misconception, and it's wrong, and it impairs the value of their media rights, and therefore they're owed damages, including the cost of this litigation. That's a great argument, and that's the kind of reason why you want other people other than FSU in there. Who knows what other folks could come up with if they decided to also assert a lawsuit.
Why is that a great tactic? Why you just said that you think that's a great argument? Why?
So I think that, well, because it's true. If it wasn't true, then it wouldn't be a great argument. If it was just going to get bounced out of court, that's not a great argument. But I think it is true because of the way that they've argued it. So in their underlying declaratory judgment action, they're saying what that grant of rights is only while we're in the conference. If we leave the conference, we get our media rights. We're only granting rights for the time period that we're in there. What they're saying is we have a different interpretation of what the grant of rights means. And if our interpretation is right, then what the ACC is doing is slandering the title to our rights, and therefore they owe us damages. That's a completely different argument than what our FSU lawyers have been asserting. So that's why I think it's good. Now we've got the ACC trying to defend in South Carolina a different kind of lawsuit. And the way that the ACC responds to what Clemson is saying could have some impact and help us in our lawsuit. It might put the ACC in a position where if they say one thing over here in South Carolina, it's going to be inconsistent with what they're arguing down here in Florida, and either side can use that to their advantage. So strategically, this is brilliant.
So that case can help inform this case, and the more people you have jump in the ring, the more different views of this case or suit. And all of a sudden now North Carolina's doing it, Clemson's doing it, Florida State's doing it, and you've got the ACC head on a swivel having a real hard time with consistency.
And by the way, the converse is not true. So Clemson can say things that would be inconsistent with FSU's lawsuit, and FSU can say things that are inconsistent with Clemson's lawsuit, and either side can disavow whatever they said down there. So if something happens and Clemson says something and FSU doesn't agree with it, they can just simply say, we don't agree with that. That has nothing to do with what we're saying. That's not how we see it. So it doesn't hurt us the same way FSU is likely stuck with admissions or contradictory information in either of these lawsuits.
We're talking with Mike Tomkiewicz, attorney, shareholder. Gray Robinson joins us frequently to help clarify these issues with Florida State's case against the ACC and the ACC's case against Florida State, the Clemson lawsuit, etc. Ultimately, when the judge did talk about this, he wanted this to go to mediation. We were referencing that a moment ago. I want to go circle back to that with Judge Cooper. Wasn't that coming up here soon within the next month?
It was. And then both sides filed a joint motion to extend the deadline to select a mediator. I didn't look at the order, but needless to say, frankly, I don't think it's ready for mediation quite yet. You want to get through all these issues. For instance, the denial of the stay, the ultimate denial of the motion to dismiss. You don't want those factors lingering out there if we're going to go try to mediate it, because if those are questions that are undecided, the other side, the ACC in this context, would be saying, well, that's a reason why you should pay more, because there's a chance that the stay will be granted or that another motion to dismiss will be granted. So let's clear up all the easy questions that are going to be in one party's favor, and then you can get to the basis of how you're going to determine how much money is going to be paid, because you'll have more certainty as to the questions and the risk.
Well, that brings me to what, in your mind, is that timeline to clarify these initial rulings in order to get to the meaty stuff, which is the mediation?
Yeah. So, full disclosure, I read the boards and I read what's out there on the internet. So sometimes I feel like what my legal opinion is influenced by what I read by certain posters on, say, Warchant, that sort of thing. So sometimes I try to separate that. If I'm answering this question in the context of what I read on the boards, I'm pretty convinced that things are going to happen before this football season even starts. But I think I keep coming back to I need to divorce myself from that. I think that if you're really looking at it from a legal standpoint, we're still a long ways away from any resolution on this. I think you may want to go farther along in the litigation. I think in some ways, Clemson is farther along in the process on getting to some kind of resolution than we are. They've got this confidentiality order that was entered on May 3rd that says that the ACC has to provide a copy of the ESPN agreement by May 10th, this Friday. That's critical to getting this down the road. You need to see what that says. I know that our lawyers have reviewed it and taken notes on it, but it's different than having a copy of it that you can file legal pleadings in response to. So if you're asking me for a prediction on timeline, I don't think that it's going to be done before this season. I think it's still a fair estimate to say that we would be out before the 2026 season, but I don't think that we're close to really resolving. But that being said, I think I said this previously, when it starts getting close to being resolved, I feel like it's going to happen quickly. I just don't think that those dominoes have started to fall yet.
So, Mike, I think those in Florida State's camp, meaning you, me, anybody that counts themselves as a Nole, were buoyed by what you just referenced when they read that, in fact, Clemson was going to be able to obtain a copy. Because I think the thought is for all of us, and I don't know if it's this way for Clemson fans watching the FSU case, but however one is affected, the other is affected. Like if this happens for them, it should happen for us. But you're saying, no, not necessarily, two entirely different things.
Yeah. Right. And perhaps the way that the Clemson suit is positioned, I'd prefer them to be pushing it harder. Maybe it's better for them to try to get it resolved than us. So again, that goes back to the point where I said it's better if there's a bunch of folks that are in there trying to assert their rights as opposed to just FSU. FSU kind of loses control in that respect, but perhaps that's not a bad thing.
If I were to posit to you that once the house begins to crumble, that is to say that, say, Clemson has a clear path out and it's the writing's on the wall and their case is moving quicker, that this brings people to the table faster. At that point, the dominoes are falling, right? At that point, once Clemson gets out, this thing's a wash.
Oh, if somebody gets close to being out or having their lawsuit resolved or the rights determined, the whole thing will fall apart. If FSU gets it done first, Clemson will get the similar terms. If Clemson gets it done, FSU will get similar terms. Right. What would be interesting is if one party doesn't believe that the terms are fair. So whatever the deal is for Clemson, if FSU says that's not good enough for us, we deserve like a lower value, whatever it is, that would be an interesting situation, which could happen. I just don't think so. I think that everybody involved understands that money is going to be paid to the ACC, and they just want it to be a little unreasonable, not just completely on the moon unreasonable.
So one final thing, I guess, or a couple of final things here, and I'll ask you to speak on anything that you want to that I haven't addressed, and I'm sure there's something. But also, if North Carolina comes forward, and certainly we've heard some strong language from people in really influential positions at North Carolina regarding this situation. It was kind of funny to me. They were almost telling certain members of their university staff to stand down when they were shaming Florida State and Clemson. You had, you had some pretty influential people say, "Go easy on all that shaming. We kind of think they may be right." And so that interested me. At some point, let's just say, another hypothetical because it's interesting. We're basically at the anniversary of Brett McMurphy talking about the Magnificent Seven, in which it was alleged there were 7 teams that wanted out of the ACC and that they were bonding. All right, going off of that premise, we think we could guess the teams, but for this sake, let's just say it's North Carolina and Virginia Tech, Louisville, and others. If any one of them or a couple of them decide to join this, they sense weakness, blood in the water, whatever it might be, does the ACC just say, okay, we're done, let's get what we can get and just figure? I mean, like, would that expedite everything in a way where would they just realize they're fighting a losing battle?
Yeah, that's absolutely a potential outcome of it. That's another reason why you want more people in the party. So if it turns out that the ACC now has to fight in all these jurisdictions and spend all this money, and it looks like a good portion of their membership is fired up enough about this to actually instigate litigation, then yeah, maybe that makes the ACC say, let's figure this out. I think it more likely that the ACC looks at this as an existential crisis, just like FSU does, and they aren't going to let this go until it gets so close to the house of cards crumbling that basically ESPN says you're risking everything. And if you want to have any kind of relationship with us going forward, you need to figure out how to not let this go any further. And so I think that you're going to see pressure on the ACC from multiple angles, but the more that we can get from its member institutions, the more likely we are to have the house of cards tumble.
Anything that I missed, Mike, that you'd like to address here before we reconvene down the line?
No, I would like to add that Judge Cooper he's still got it, man. That guy is a great judge and perhaps the best lawyer on FSU's side, seemingly. Of course, he's going to be fair, but he did his own research for this order on the motion to stay. It is a beautifully written order, well reasoned, multiple reasons to support the decision. And when you read it, you just come away with a sense of absolutely just great job. So Judge Cooper, great judge, proving to be so still. And so I think that everything's going the way that you would want it to go if you're Florida State right now.
I love it. I envision you and your fellow attorneys maybe meeting up for a Friday happy hour and saying, "Did you read Cooper? My goodness gracious, guys, the guy still got it."
We do. Sometimes we go up the corner pocket. You may see us up there, Jeff.
I will have one with you, sir. And I always appreciate your insight. Thanks for making time for us as usual. Have a good rest of your week, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Jeff. Have a great day.